My name is Karen Stroobants. I am still identifying, I would say, as a scientist because most of my career has been in science, but I've recently transitioned about 2 years ago to become a policy advisor. So first I worked on policy for researchers at Royal Society in London, and then I kind of transferred to Royal Society of Chemistry. And so what I'm trying to do at the moment is think about regulation but also policy in institutions that can actually make science better in the sense that it makes behaviors and cultural environments for researchers better. And that's probably my kind of number one passion at the moment. I'm also on the side, I'm an active person in terms of sports. So I kind of believe in combining a good career with a healthy life. So I think that kind of sums me up in just a few sentences.
Thank you. One of the concepts that we are exploring at this conference is science diplomacy.
Yeah.
So I would like to ask you, how do you understand that concept, and has that understanding changed over time?
So what science diplomacy means to me is using science as a way to make relationships and maybe talk also as a way in sometimes in conversations to talk about maybe more difficult parts of relationships between countries and on an international level. Where that kind of has changed for me. So I think there's been a period where maybe I didn't really know what it meant very well. But a few years ago, in 2017, I was part of the Linda Alumni, the Linda Nobel Laureates meeting. And I think there, for me, there was a kind of introduction at some point about, not formally in the event, but there was an introduction of one of the people I talked to informally, who was involved in the organization, who said, you know, Linda was really a place after the war where relationships were starting to build again between scientists because they have a lot of common good, they have a lot of discussions to progress their work that are maybe outside often of political spheres. And it's really in Linda that the first relationships were reestablished after the war with Germany. And that for me kind of gave me a real sense of what science diplomacy means, because their scientific links were really used to reestablish political relationships. And I think that's kind of for me given me a sense of maybe what it means. And then obviously after that I've seen kind of more things happening where such relationships are from more in maybe more recent examples. But that's for me really changed how I thought about that and how I maybe defined what it could do and which impact it could have.
And do you think that there are social challenges that would particularly benefit from solutions through international scientific collaboration?
I mean, there are many, I think, because at the moment we're facing challenges that are global and that cannot be solved by a single country or even a single continent. Thinking about climate change, thinking about gender equality, and many more. Also ethical use of upcoming technologies. These are things we all have to agree on. And actually, I'm for my job at the moment not only doing research policy, but also environmental policy. And I'm working on advising the government on waste and resources strategies. And that's also an area where we know there are a lot of things we can do in the UK, but if we're not tackling these things in harmonization with regulation across the world, you know, products will still enter from other countries, and it wouldn't make sense to do it in isolation. There's just a need for collaboration to solve a lot of these really big issues.
And if we're thinking particularly about the UK and Latin America connection, how do you think innovation can be used to foster diplomatic relations between the two regions?
I mean, I think the strength of both research and innovation is that there's a common language, and it often overcomes differences, cultural differences, geographical differences. It's kind of a language that people who are working in research and innovation share. So I think this is the strength, I guess, to really find solutions together. That usually, whatever the differences between people are, in any lab environment where I have worked with people from all over the world, everyone knows what the scientific method is. Everyone knows, what is our language to go from a concept to a product. These are kind of almost common languages. And I think that's probably the strength of science and the strength of innovation.
And to what extent do you think that a summit like Shaping Horizons can play a role in that?
I mean, I think these kind of events are very important because we're a global world. I think it's still very important that people can come together, communicate, and have really discussions together. I know at the moment there's a lot of controversy about air travel and academia, and maybe people will have to find other solutions and make more use of the digital technologies we have available. But I think this kind of events where there's room to listen and to take ideas and concepts, but at the same time also sit together and have real live discussions with people with different cultural backgrounds is really important. And actually, one of the things I'll be talking about in the final session is diversity. And I truly believe that diversity, different backgrounds, different experiences, different cultures are really steering really good innovation. So there is strength because people just bring different ideas. Everyone who has a different experience, a different context, a different background will just look at a problem a bit differently and bring a bit different idea into the context. And I think that's where the kind of most innovative solutions will be found, in those kind of teams. So I think this is really a good way to try to tackle big challenges.
You're talking about diversity, and the members at this summit have very different backgrounds in terms of discipline and nationality and so on. But I would also like to focus on another aspect, and that is their age. Mm-hmm. So we're working with an age group here that is between 18 and 32. What do you think are the opportunities and challenges of working with that age group?
I mean, they are still very early in their career, which I think can be a challenge, but also can be something very positive, as in the sense that they might pick up on things here that maybe will steer their further direction. A challenge is that maybe not everyone will have the background that's needed to come to a kind of final solution at this point. So some of them will need to probably grasp the subject they're working with in a bit more detail before coming at that level where they can kind of contribute as in the next step. But I've heard that these people will try to stay in touch and further develop their ideas. So I think that's the way to kind of deal with that challenge. And I'm also imagining that the food for thought they're taking from all the talks here will drive their conversations to another level as well. So I think there's probably more opportunity than challenges. And this is a good group of people, I think, with a lot of energy and still maybe also a bit of lack of knowledge, which can maybe push them into ideas that someone who's really expert would maybe not want to try. So I think that can also be an opportunity. So yeah, definitely promising.
And finally, I will let you go and prepare for your panel that's coming up very soon. But I would lastly like to know, why did you decide to accept the offer to speak here?
I mean, two reasons we've already touched on. The first one, because I'll be speaking to a very big group of young people with a lot of energy and a lot of interest. And I think the issue I'll be discussing, the diversity, inclusion, and especially in leadership, I think it's one that everyone who's thinking about innovation, who's thinking about pushing the world to kind of solve these challenges, has to be aware of this problem, because it's relevant in everything we do. And the second one is because I think this issue is so important. So I think in the hope of kind of sharing why I think it's important and which are also some of the evidence that shows it's important, I think it's important to share that with people, and especially a group of young people who are trying to change the world.
Well, we really appreciate to have you here, and thank you so much.